Just to briefly introduce Bharat to the group, I hope you all read the post that I put because I put up a lot of details on that. But Bharat has got a long, his ultra cycling journey. The trajectory is something really amazing for me also to have seen because he had only done some brevets before he signed up to do the very first edition of the Ultra Spice race. That was his first ultra race, and from that point, he's gone on to race at all five editions of Ultra Spice, doing the 1750, winning these races. He's the only Indian to have done VRAM. He's also set uh, two Guinness World Records. The third one is in the process of long distances. And in the Ultra Spice itself, and we did race around Austria also as a two-person team. So Bharat is one person who has not only had this, great trajectory of setting himself up tougher and tougher goals and going out to achieve them, but he's also done a lot of different formats. So some years back, Bharat again did some hardcore brevets in Bangalore, some of the tougher ones. So he's been doing brevets, he's been doing ram style racing, he's been doing relay team, and he's taken two self-supported rides in the last couple of editions of Ultra Spice and won both those editions that he took part in. So that's the reason why we have Bharat with us today to share his insights that he's gathered from his journey.
Shall I start, Divya?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for the nice introduction, and good evening, everyone. Um, like I was already drowsy by listening to all those list of rules and so many rules. Like as Divya said, I am that person who is not involved in much of the rules. I ride with that integrity, and I am not bothered about what the rules say. So I've learned the rules as the ride progresses. So as summing it up, I've done 5 crewed races, 2 self-supported races, 3 Guinness record attempts, uh, other virtual racing I've done. The virtual racing, the silent one is the virtual race across America, which I did the last year. I stood globally third over there and first in my age category. Other than that, I've done Hoodoo, I've done national time trials, Everesting, half Everesting, various brevets, Bliss in the Hills 1200. So I got a lot of experience in past. Most of the people ask like since how long you have been riding. So I did my first brevet in November 2016, and in November itself I did 3 brevets, and immediately after those 3 brevets I signed up for the Ultra Spice January 2017 race. So that is a brief about me. So as you must have come to know about that I've done different formats of racing. So starting with the brevets. So difference between brevets and the supported races. So brevets and supported races are completely different in their planning and all the features which they have. So in brevets, most of I don't think here anybody would be here that who have not done brevets. So you must be very well acquainted about how the brevets are conducted and how you ride in brevets. Uh, as compared to the supported races from the brevets, the rider don't have to worry about hydration, nutrition. They are calculated by the crew, and the crew takes care of all these things. The crew takes care of the navigation. The rider doesn't have to worry about his sleep breaks. The crew decides whether the rider has to sleep at what point of time and how much he has to sleep. And he doesn't have to worry that he has to put alarms or who will be waking him up. He will be getting his proper massage, physiotherapy sessions whenever he requires them during the course of the race. Whatever the medical supplies or the supplements when he needs, that everything can be planned by the crew. Other than that, the crew, if crew is there, a motivation factor is there with the rider. That crew is there to push him whenever he's riding. So crew can play him the songs which he likes whenever he wants to. The crew can give him the push when he's feeling low. So all these factors are not there in the brevet. And also in brevets, as you are aware, there are checkpoints. So similarly, in the supported races, there are checkpoints where the cards have to be signed. So the crew takes care of all these things. So in a nutshell, in a supported race, the crew takes care of everything and rider is just responsible for riding his bike. And he gets a thrashing when he pokes his nose inside the job of the crew, that you are doing this in which fashion, you should do it in this fashion or not. So crew tells him, you just ride your bike, we will take care of everything. So riding in a supported races is more fun, as your friends and family members are alongside you, and you just ride your bike and you just do the racing part. So as compared to brevets and self-supported, I would consider the brevets and the self-supported race events are the same. Only the difference between self-supported and brevet is that the adrenaline rush, the word race comes in the self-supported races. So there is an adrenaline rush involved in the self-supported races. Otherwise, the brevets are 100% same as compared to the self-supported races. You have to get it signed. You have to manage your nutrition, hydration, sleep breaks, bike mechanics, and whatnot. But still, as compared to planning of a brevet and to a race, will be different, because the race words comes into a self-supported race. So, and I'll be coming on to those points subsequently. Also, I would like to mention the Guinness record, because people keep asking me what is it like, how Guinness records are being attempted and what all needs to be done. So Guinness record, the authorities, they don't consider any difference between the supported segment or the unsupported segment. For them, it is one and the same thing, whether you do it supported or unsupported. But what they want from you is a complete checklist. There are a few pages which the Guinness people give as a guideline when your record attempt gets approved, and you get the complete guidelines and you have to follow all those guidelines. You have to, because those people are not there to witness your record. So you have to give them various proof that will be in the form of video, photographs, your Garmin data, your cadence, heart rate, and whatnot. So there are like plethora of things which needs to be taken care. The route, GPX files, KML files. So a lot of things which needs to be given to them so that they can validate your records. So now I'll be coming to the crux for which we are together here. That is the preparation for the self-supported races. So I would consider brevet is the best tool to prepare for a self-supported race, because that is closely resembling to the format which you are going to attempt. So when I'm planning for a brevet or for a self-supported race, I consider both the same. So I'll be coming to the practical points. So the most important point which people falter on when they're coming to attempt a self-supported race is that they modify their bike and they feel that, yes, now they have modified and added new gadgets, they will be able to perform better in the race. So that is the biggest mistake which people do. People just before the race, they add on 2 more bike bottle, the bike holder which can carry 2 more bottles, and in the initial hours itself they find that the bike holder getting loose and it is getting fallen, and the complete ride is disturbed. Himanshu Thushe is here, this happened to him last year, this year itself. So that is one thing. People take new bike wheels and they just put them in when the race starts. I'll be riding in these ceramic wheel bearings and I'll be attempting the race, I'll be too fast. But they don't know that anything new which they experiment in the race is the biggest mistake which anybody can do in a race. And this is applicable to all formats. In self-supported format, it is more critical because you don't have any spares and there is nobody to take care of you. So the gospel truth is that you have to ride the same bike for at least 1 month before the race, and it should be 100% the same bike which you will be riding in the race. So that is one thing, and the most important thing. Another most important thing is the bike mechanics. So you should have full confidence on the bike which you are riding on. So when you are doing your training on that bike, you more than 50% of the things are taken care, because it will not give up during the race as you have been riding on that same thing and you have full confidence on that. Another thing is the bike mechanics. So you should not, because if you are in a brevet, there are people who will help you out because there is no time penalty or time limitations. where other riders can stop and just help you out with the bike mechanics. But in a race, take my word, nobody will stop you to help you out. They'll be happy that your competitor is out of the race as due to a bike problem, and you have to just deal it on your own. So there are two things to this, the bike mechanics. First thing is that you have the spares, you have the right tools to take care of the problem which you face in the bike. The second thing is the confidence to use it. So if you have anything with you and you don't know how to use it, or you don't have the confidence to use it, then what is the use of having that tool or that thing with you? So you should be, and what my experience says that 50% extra, which is the confidence to use, or that confidence which can take you forward. If you are having that confidence, most of the time that problem will not be a problem itself. You will be unnecessarily worrying about that problem, and in later on you will be finding that it was never a problem and you just wasted your time there. So you should have a knack of your bike, how it functions, how the cables go through, your cables work, how the front brake, rear brake, your chain, derailleur, everything. You should just be 100% thorough with it. People have faced very small issues that their chain, the rear chain is not mounting on the rear derailleur. The very simple issue is that due to the vibrations and all that continuous riding, the screws which are tightening the rear derailleur, they just get loose. And this is such a small problem, and you are just not able to figure out what the problem is. So you should know your bike and know how your bike will behave in what conditions. So these were the most important, the bike which you are training that should be used in the race. Second is the bike mechanics. So for bike mechanics, third is the spares which you carry. So spares also is, as Divya has already brought the checklist. So that checklist, as Divya pointed out, on chain. So chain itself is the biggest culprit in such races. And so you should have a good brand new chain before any race. You should know that your chain is just wear out or not. So if you have any doubt, or your mechanic has any doubt, you should just replace the chain almost 40 days in advance before the race starts, so that your new chain is in alignment with the condition of the rear cassette and the front sprockets. So the spares consist of chain tool, magic links, lube, tools, CO2 cartridge, pump, tubes, tires, puncture. Tires is not a spare for me, because I consider tire also to be a very important part, and I use the most rugged tire available in the market for my self-supported races. So that means that at least I have confidence that my tires won't give up, because I've seen people who are just worrying in the race when their tires have given up. It is something like really you have not planned for the race. So your tires have to be so rugged that you have full confidence that even the side walls won't be giving up. So I've seen people who bring racing tires for self-supported races. So you're racing, but you're not racing against, you're not, it's not a punishment for you, because when you use racing wheels, the side walls are racing tires, the side walls are so thin and the routes such as Ultra Spice, it is so rugged, there's so much bad roads. The side walls will go for a 6, and you'll be standing on the road waiting for a tire. And the only thing you will regret that you are not carrying a spare tire. So having a very rugged tire is very important. Other than that, chain tool I've mentioned. So chain tool, how to use that chain tool, you should know how to mend your, you should not be worried if one link goes away. You should just shorten the chain and just keep moving. How to use a magic link. There are conditions when spoke breaks. So you should know if your spoke breaks, that doesn't mean that you have to replace the wheel or you have to mend that spoke. That is not the only alternative. There are many alternatives before that and after that also. But you should know what you have to do when a spoke breaks. So there are many things available on net on that, and there's a gadget also available, but that applying that gadget takes time. It takes few minutes of your riding time, that complete race time. So you should know whether I am supposed to replace a spoke or not, or continue riding. And if the wobble is very less, you can loosen your brakes so that the space is available and it's not touching the brake pads. If So, and there are much more to that. I'll not be giving all those examples because Divya will tell that you cannot teach wrong examples here, which I've been doing on my races. So like in one of the race, I did that the wobble with a friend of mine who had the spoke failed and it broke. The wobble was so much that he was just standing on the road at 11 o'clock at night in the climbing towards Jog Falls, and I told him to and he told that his race is finished. So I just told him to remove his brake pads and just continue riding, because that is more important. Either you quit or you continue riding. So it is not to be taken as a wrong example, but you should know that if you have the will to continue, you will continue at whatever cost. But you have to just keep safety also in your mind. Other than that, I've covered 3 points: bike mechanics, spares. Nutrition is another big factor which is which plays a deciding role in your place in the complete self-supported race. So if you're stopping again and again for taking care, or like for buying stuff from the shops, then obviously it is having a time penalty on the overall time which you are as you are doing a race. So you should know like what your body adapts to, and you should take that nutrition in all your training rides. So nutrition is very important. Like people ask that like what Bharat follows during his self-supported. So for me, I take peanuts, roasted peanuts, and I take dry fruits, I take dates. Other than that, I take gels as well, but gels is not forming a major part of my nutritional needs. I keep gels only when it is like I'm just not having anything with me which can like I'm out of my supplies, nutrition supplies, then I switch to the gels. I've seen riders who just plan their races on the gel. So if you start your race with the gel, and whenever a time comes, like when the race is ending and you need to sprint for about 2 to 3 hours, you need to push yourself. So at that time, your body is just so much accustomed to gel that if you take gel at that point of time, your body will not give you that kick. So I run my nutrition in such a way that my normal nutrition continues for most of the race for about 80%, and whenever I need that extra push, I take support of those easy nutrition, which gives me extra power and I can push at that point of time. So you need to plan your strategy well before you start the race. So I heard that people are asking about nutrition. So this is one factor which is very important in planning your nutrition. So other than the fifth factor is the route. The route has to be by heart. You cannot check your Garmin or check your mobile from where the left turn would be, from where the right turn would be. You should be by heart by all the cities or the towns or the villages which will be coming en route. You should be by heart with all the right and left turns which will be coming en route. Wherever they are coming. So you should be like 3 kilometers before that turn. You should be like, that alarm bell should be ringing in your head that a turn is coming, turn is coming, turn is coming. And because you are aware of the distance, at what distance that turn will be coming exactly. So when that distance comes within range of 1 kilometer, that turn will be there and you are ready to take the turn. So all these things contribute to the time penalties, which you will not be having when you're racing. So the better you prepare for the race, the better results you get for the race. I'll tell one golden rule which like I had applied in my race after covering all these points. You should be aware of the bottlenecks in the cities. Like there are always some bottlenecks in the city when you cannot avoid them, but at least should be aware that at what time you'll be crossing that city as per your strategy, and you should be mentally aware that yes, I'll be finding traffic at that city. So this covers the route. Sleep management is very important. Sleep management as it is a self-supported race and time is at stake. So there are many factors which take care of the sleep management. Like you should be aware at what point of time your sleep is inevitable. Like whatever dose of caffeine or coffee you take, sleep is bound to come to you. So for me, like my timing is 3:30 in the morning to 5 in the morning. So whatever I do, like at that point of time, I have to sleep. So if it is 1 day race, I can skip that and I can override it. But if it is a multi-day race, I cannot skip it. That is the time I have to sleep, whatever come may. So, but at 9:30 or 12 in the night, I can overcome it by the help of caffeine. Caffeine gels are there, caffeine tablets are there. Other than that, coffee shots are there. So it is not necessary if there is a restaurant which is there, then only I'll have coffee. I'll keep coffee shots with me. There are dry coffee powders there, wet coffee paste is there. There are many options available in the market. So I use those things to just add it to cold. If I'm not having hot water also, I'll just add it to cold water, 1 cup of cold water, and just gulp it. So that helps me just keep moving on. So sleep management is very important. You have to sleep when you are feeling sleepy. It is a self-supported race. There is nobody to take care. If you are riding on road and you are feeling sleepy, you cannot risk it at the cost of your life. So there is a rider here in the audience. Last year he was attempting a race and he was feeling sleepy, but he was able to ride. So he continued riding, and because he was confident, yes, he can ride. But after some kilometers, he himself admitted that after some kilometers there was a pothole in the road, and he didn't see that because the attention was he was not that much attentive, and he banged into that pothole and he just injured himself. So it didn't cost him the race, but he was definitely injured. That definitely has effect on your mental state and the confidence with which you are riding. So sleep management is very important. You should not ride when you are feeling sleepy in a self-supported race. You should at least sleep for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then start going. Electronics plays a very important role. Electronics consist of your Garmin, your mobile, your battery, your front light, rear light, and your power bank. So these 5 things have to be catered for. Like you should know what life is my front light, what life is having my rear light. Power bank will continue for so much of time, mobile and Garmin. So all these things are very important. I have seen people who are racing, who are doing actual racing, and they are stranded on road because their light is not functioning and their power bank is down, or they are just not able to navigate because they were dependent on their mobile for the application that where the route will turn after this. So the lack is that they are not aware of the route, and then now they are dependent on their mobile, like which turn to take. They don't have mobile, so they can't call also anyone. So they're just waiting on the road and they are not aware of the next place. So they don't know how to turn which side. So all these things, electronics plays one of the most important role in planning your things. So that is very important. You should carry gadgets which are so you should carry gadgets which are consuming less energy. So your Garmin, so coming on to Garmin, your Garmin should be a bonus to you. It should not be a liability that you are charging your Garmin and you are paying a time penalty for it. Your front light batteries, I've seen most of the lights, they are like costing 6,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, but they're, if you are using it in low power, that will be helping you out for about 7 to 8 hours. But when you're riding on ultra spice route or any route, your security, your safety depends upon the intensity of the light you're using. So you cannot use a light which is having low power because you want to save on the battery. So you are like, it is costing your own safety. And all these points are very practical points which nobody will tell you who has not raced. Or even brevets, people are riding in groups, so you don't feel all these things. But when you are doing self-supported races, your light has to be very good intensity. It has to be saving you power, like not costing too much on power also. So your rear light, at least your rear light should be self-sufficient before, at the time you start and till the time you end your race. So I've seen people who uses rechargeable light for rear light also. So that is just not done. So all these things have to be managed, and you should plan your race well in advance. If you ask me like how I do, I use a power bank to power my front light. That is USB powered. That is very much efficient, and it is not at all costly. Like people ask me, like it must be very costly that it is you are saving onto that. No, it is very cheap, and it is very like it is almost 4 years that I've been using that light. I have like 4 lights with me, and they are just uh, sealing me through in each and every event I've been doing. So I use a power bank to power my front light. My rear lights are powered by Duracell batteries, and there are 2 batteries. And once I start my event, uh, it is like independent. I just tape it so much that even if how much amount of rain comes, there is no rain going inside that rear light. So it does not switch off due to rain or anything, like no disturbance. Third is the Garmin. So I charge my Garmin from that power bank itself. So everything is taken care. And like my power bank is 20,000 mAh. So that takes care of at least 1.5 nights or 2 nights. So I'm carefree on that aspect. So if you plan well, you execute it well. And you should be aware that if you're having no light, you can't race, you can't ride at night. It is as per rules. So you cannot violate on those aspects. Other than that, medical is very important. You should be aware that what you are prone to, there are chances that you can catch fever also en route. You should have medicine for that. Other things which you are prone to, you should have that with you. Hydration is very important. People consider that it is self-supported, I'll save on my water. No, you are not saving on your water. You are actually hurting your body, and your body will not perform when you want it to perform. So hydration is very important. In routes like Ultraspice, there is no hydration available at night. There's no shops open en route. So you have to plan well in advance, and that needs to be taken care of, at least by 9 p.m. at night. And in Himalayan, it is a favor that we won't be riding at night for self-supported, so you don't have to worry for that. But even in Himalayan, when you cross Leh and then we cross Nimu, I don't think there are much shops en route, so we need to be self-sufficient on that hydration aspect also. And the golden rule, which everybody knows, you have to eat before you feel hungry and drink before you feel thirsty. So this covers most of the aspects which needs to be taken care while planning of a self-supported race. So the thing which I told in between, that there's a golden thing which sails me through in the events, is that I keep my off-saddle time bare minimum. So that is the key. The more time you ride, the more time you waste in these menial jobs, whatever it is, like buying food, hydration, on all these. So this is the time you are wasting. So you have to plan everything. So my each break is amalgamated. So I take, even if I am doing a self-supported ride, I don't plan my pee break that, okay, it's my pee break, now it's my hydration break, now it's my nutrition break. No, all things are combined. So I take a break every 5 hours or 6 hours when it's necessity as per my plan, because I need to hydrate also. I need to refill. So all these things are amalgamated. So this thing has to be kept in mind, and you need to train. You need to train when you are doing training rides, keeping this in mind. And Murphy's laws is always there. When you think that everything is going right, and you just land into something which makes you feel helpless. But still, it is your mental that and that is the point when your mental strength comes in, and you just decide what I have to do, whether I have to continue riding or take care of that problem. Like that problem will overrule my mind, or my mind will overrule that problem. So that is very important. For some more personal experiences, so as it was covered in the rules, that drafting behind each other when you're doing self-supported. So as the guy covered that there are riders who have been riding in buddy pairs, and there was a query from one of the audience, one of the riders, is that like they will be benefited when they're riding in buddy pairs as they are drafting. So this is a big myth. This is the biggest myth which has not produced results till date. So when you're riding in buddy pairs, like it is a liability on you. So how can, like, riding in buddy pairs is, you're not come for touring here. So you have come for racing. So you have to just have clear conscience in your mind, whether you have come for racing or you have come for touring. So I have seen people who come with the mind of touring and they just enjoy the ride. They are just not concerned whether who is coming first or who is coming last. They just have their own set timing. They have their own goals. They have their own strategy, and they just follow it. And they just enjoy the ride. That is like they just make it the most fun ever possible. But if you are coming to race and you are thinking that buddy pair will be beneficial, no, it is a big myth, and you'll be just that buddy pair will be broken in within hours. It will not take days also. It will be broken within hours, and there are people who are listening to this and will agree with that. So buddy pair is never beneficial. Divya is laughing continuously. Like she has seen so many experiences that people. I recommend that there should be nobody riding in buddy pairs. At least racing in buddy pairs. They can ride in buddy pairs for touring enjoyment, but not for racing at least. The bike is so in self-supported races, like bike tends to get heavy, so you have to take care of that aspect also. So you have to plan your logistics in such a way that it's not heavy, but it is self-sufficient, and you should always have a backup. So that backup means if at so and so point you knew that there is one shop and you will buy your stuff from there, and that shop is not there, and you are just out of everything, and you just say, how will I ride now? No. Like I'll tell my personal experience. In flow of the race, I like every year the checkpoints or in the race points, the what do you call the rider kit or the bike, the racer kit, the bags which we
give. Drop bags.
The drop bags which we give. So I was under the impression that as of the last year, the drop bag was at Shimoga. So I was just in the mental setup that the drop bags are at Shimoga, and I was continuing my ride. And I didn't took my drop bag, which was located at Anantpuram. So the thing which saved me that when I checked at Shimoga that drawbacks are not there, I got to know that drawbacks are not here because they were at Anantpuram. So at that point of time, I cannot say that I am out of my water or my nutrition or anything like that. I had my backups with me. So those backups made me continue my event, and I went as per my plan. So you should have always backup with you, because you never know what uncertainties are there in front of you and what is there in store for you. So anything can happen at any point of time. It can be due to own mistakes also, as I did. Sleep I have already covered in March. So one more thing is very important. You have to plan so little things. Like you will be, as Divya told that till date, I don't believe there have been instances that anybody has not paid whatever purchases they have done at the shops. But the riders definitely face a problem of change. When they are doing their purchases, it is a headache on them that they are carrying either credit card or debit card or whatever the cash they are carrying. They're carrying like 500 notes and 1,000 notes, 2,000 rupees notes. So, but the shops are so small that they don't have that change of 500 or 2,000 rupees note. So what I do personally is that I carry only 10 and 20 rupees notes with me. They just increase the size of my small purse by bit, but I am always comfortable that I don't have to apply my mind when I'm spent with those 20 rupees or 10 rupees. I don't even carry 100 rupees, because that I know that I'll not be using it. I just carry 10 or 20 rupees, and I don't carry coins. That will increase onto the weight penalty. That will make my bike heavy. So like I'm so immaculate on those things. Just few things left which I need to cover. When I compare a self-supported event with a supported event, so a self-supported event requires like very less planning as compared to a supported event. Like supported event is a nightmare, and the amount of team planning you have to do, amount of logistic planning, amount of race planning, strategy, like it is a hell lot of things. So since the time I've started doing self-supported races, like I'm enjoying that more as compared to the supported races. But the amount of fun you have in a supported race is like, there's no comparison with the self-supported race, because in self-supported you are just doing that race and you have that memory with yourself. When you are having a crew with you, you have those memory with that crew for lifetime, and you remember all, like till date we have get-togethers for event specific, like we did that event together and we have get-togethers. We have a lot of memories, and those memories like we cherish for lifetime. So supported events are very much difficult to execute when we are doing it. There are, if planning is poor, there tend to be a lot of problems. There will be quarrels on the route, but definitely, mark my words, supported races are much more enjoyable than self-supported. But self-supported races also, the planning is it should be immaculate, as there is nobody to take care when you are doing the race actually. So now I'll be coming to the last part, so which only one point is left with me, and this point was communicated to me by Divya itself. So this is the most important point when we are doing racing. So the adrenaline rush is so high that I've seen, like, I'm yet to see racers till date, like who are just not racing, who are not racing from the start point itself. Like people, like it is a go and they just start racing, and they just burn themselves in the initial 7-8 hours, and after they, oh my god, now the Jog Fall climb is coming. So they just burn out in the initial 6 to 7 hours, and they see that I'm ahead of him, I'm ahead of him, I'm ahead of him. Why? Like it is such a big race, it is a multi-day race, and you cannot race in the initial 7 hours or 6 hours and you just say like I'm doing so well. You cannot get appreciation. I believe that you should not get appreciation in the start of the race. You should get appreciation when the race is finishing. You should be on the podium. That should be the aim. So the race never starts. In Divya's word, the race never starts till the 80% of the race distance is finished. So if it is the right distance, if I say for a Himalayan, it is 600 kilometers. Then considering those stages in between and everything in picture, like I believe the race will start only when the 80 to 85% of the distance is completed. Till time, only your strategy will take you to that place. So if you are pushing yourself against your strategy, that will definitely harm you in times to come. So you should not push against your strategy. You should have a strategy for yourself as your body allows you to do so, and which you must have witnessed in your training, in your simulation ride, and you know what your body is capable of performing. There will not be a magic and you will become Christoph Strasser or somebody during the race. So you should follow your race strategy till 80 to 85% of the event and come out with full power in the those 10% or 15% of the race distance, the later part. So that is the Guru Mantra, which like Divya has given it to me, and I also say it to everyone wherever I go. So that is all from my side, which I needed to cover. I think I've covered most of the practical points which I have experienced in past 5 years of riding. And Divya, can I take questions from them?
Yeah. So, thanks a lot, Bharat. That was great. Thank you for sharing so much. It was interesting for me also to see your insights and how they've changed with coming into self-supported, and how things change with that. And one of the interesting things that I found, what you kept what you said a couple of times, was calling the loss of time due to small little errors and things, calling it a time penalty. And that's a great way to approach racing, whether it's RQ or self-supported, is to think about like your clock is ticking away from the moment the race starts till the end. Your clock is going to keep ticking. And in that, every little inefficiency ends up becoming literally a penalty on you in terms of time. So time is like a currency, and you should think about it that way. It's an expensive thing that you're trying to conserve during the race. So all your approach and your preparation and training and everything should be focused towards that. Good, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
That was, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree to that. Like, I would just share the current rate statistics, which I did then in the UltraSpice 1200 kilometers in January 2021. So my total off saddle time in the entire 1200 kilometer was less than, it is available on my Strava also. It was less than 2 hours 40 minutes for the
Wow.
entire 1200.
Okay.
So that thing takes me ahead, and like that is the point where most of the cyclists are lacking. They don't
Mm.
give that much. They train hard, they increase their speed, they increase their FTP, but they never put their mind into the time when they are off saddle.
Off
So it
saddle.
is the off saddle which is taking them back. It is not the
Yeah.
speed which is taking them ahead.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Good point. And the other interesting thing was about the buddy thing, which made me also, it amused me because that was even my experience when I was riding breves. That I found riding with a buddy actually, what, you lose so much time because one person wants to stop for water, somebody, you're not synchronized. One person stops for water, so you stop, then you've lost that time. Then by then, somebody else, then you start riding for an hour or two, then somebody else wants to go to the toilet. You don't, but you waste time in that. So, very frankly, buddying up or not is something about how you're approaching the race. So, like you said, your racing is not it's not likely to be an advantage in if you're in a race mode. It's unlikely to be an advantage having buddies because as we saw in the first self-supported race, the 1750 kilometers, Sundar, Nadir and Gallon rode together. They had come with a focus to really enjoy that 1750 kilometers. All strong riders, they had made up their minds that they were going to ride with each other. And the race really didn't matter so much to them. They were very much randonneurs also, so they were not really thinking in terms of racing. And they had a good time, but I don't think they may not have spent like even 20 minutes actually taking advantage of drafting each other in that entire time. They rode side by side, they, did time pass and things. They didn't take an advantage of drafting. So as far as that question which was asked, the buddy advantage is more of a psychological fun, all those aspects. If you're racing, you've got to be, strong and mentally fully prepared to do it on your own, really. Right. So,
Yeah, we can ask questions, please.
yes, yeah. So I'll just open it up for questions now. Just do the same thing. Raise your hand and I'll call out your name. Yes, Chaitanya.
Oh, it's me again. I have a question. Do you carry a bike lock when you're doing self-supported race?
No, I don't carry a bike lock. Whenever I sleep and I just find a place where it is a bit safe. It is in a village or something like that, a bus stop where I can hide myself uh, so that I'm not visible to anyone, at least not prone to visible. And I never carried a bike lock with me. And for safety, I just put my leg or my hand on my bike and then sleep.
Okay.
I've seen instances where in breves people have lost their bike or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I keep my hand for safety purpose.
So,
Okay.
Chaitanya, I would say that's a personal decision because, yes, bikes do get stolen sometimes. This has happened in PvP also. So, it's entirely up to you how safe you want to feel when you're sleeping. Because, like, if you're just going to switch off and not be able to pay attention to your stuff, then it's better to carry a bike lock and make sure that you do that.
Okay. Just one more question for Bharat. I'm just curious. I'm amazed with your kind of like results and stuff. I just wanted to know like how many hours or like what is your weekly mileage and what is your yearly mileage?
It completely depends upon my training program. If whatever my goal is, the mileage keeps increasing as per my goal. If I'm training for a shorter event, I never punish myself with longer mileages. I keep my focus very clear, like what I'm aiming for. So if my RAM is there, if I'm preparing for RAM, the mileage is training mileage is completely different. If I'm training for UltraSpice or a Deccan Cliffhanger or something like that, it is different. My maximum mileage has gone up to, I would say, only for 1 week, that was still 1300 kilometers in a week, and normally it ranges around 5 to 600 in a week.
5 to 600 per week.
Yeah, normally, and that depends on the events.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
You're mute, Divya. There's a mute.
Yeah, sorry. There's a question in the chat box asking whether you can share gear information. Not necessarily right now, but maybe later, about which bike light, cycle computer, etc. Or maybe like you mentioned, your power bank and things.
Like there's nothing, the bike lights, I don't know the brand name also. It is a non-branded stuff. As I've been doing experiments, so I order about 6 to 7 brands, and like that is the way I sort out my things. I order 6 to 7 things, and then I sort out like what suits me the best. And I know, because people have not researched so much, so I don't go by what others are using. I take what suits me the best. I ordered 6 to, and I ordered it from AliExpress at that point of time, but I don't think that is functioning right or not. So that is one thing, and that applies to my chamois greens also. So I missed this point during the points which we were covering. Chamois green is also very important, because you will be facing saddle sores. So you carry your chamois cream along with you, and that is one thing. Cyclo computer, I'm using Garmin 1000 Edge. I purchased in 2017. Rear light I ordered a tool which is powered by Duracell, not the rechargeable one.
No, yeah. Okay, Vikas, you had a question?
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Bharat, I would like to know that you mentioned that you should be able to memorize the entire route during the race. Is it practically possible? Because to remember the entire, like you mentioning that you कहाँ पे मुड़ना है, कहाँ पे जाना है. So for me as a person, it would be very difficult to actually memorize the entire route. So how you would like to say how is it possible for us?
Yeah, just first of all, you note down the points, like what are the major cities which are coming. Like if I take example of UltraSpice race, if I'm starting from, so first I'll note down Bogmalo. The first right turn comes after 4 kilometers. It is towards right. Then after 10 kilometers, then Wales is the airport road. After that right, I have to straight go for 170 odd kilometers. Then is the Honavar, then left turn towards Western Ghats. So first I'll note down the major turns, and I'll note down the major cities or which are coming en route. And I'll note down the highway, which highway I'm using. So everywhere you will find a milestone on which the highway is written, highway number is written. So I will note down my highway number which I'm going when I'm leaving that highway. So when Honavar comes, I take a left turn, and I'll be going on that route till Sagar, not Sagar, then Shimoga, all those points. So it is not that difficult, because we are more prone to riding with Google. We are not used to all that. So whenever you are traveling long distance, you try it when you ride your car, that you note which is the small villages coming en route. You just study it, and when you are aware that you are doing this race and this route has to be memorized, study that route once in morning, once in afternoon, once in evening before your meals, and definitely within a week that route will be by heart. And firstly, it has to be segregated in terms of importance. Firstly, major cities, then which highways, small villages, where are the turns. So definitely it will come. It is not impossible. You will definitely have edge over the riders who have not done this.
Yeah. So Vikas,
people are there like who have memorized, like I, when I was planning for RAM, so I was doing this for RAM itself. like which are the time stations. So there are like 54 time stations in RAM. So it is a hell remembering those 54 time stations in the sequence itself. So, but I was doing that, trying to do that, I'll remember those 54 time stations. There's no requirement for me to remember the turns because it's a supported race. But at least I'll be mentally prepared that it is, I'll be crossing those time stations. Now that is my next aim, that's same. So what is the distance between the two? So this definitely helps in mentally gearing up for the race, even if it is a supported race.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, how much you want to put into preparing for the race, that's up to you. So what Bharat is talking about is will help you greatly to have a picture about, visualize yourself in the race. And then, once you get into a race like RAM, for example, there's so many 50 something time stations. The thing is that as a racer, you also want to know how much distance you've covered, how many time stations you've covered, how much more to go, all these things. So the better you know a route, the better it is for you when you are even during the race, understanding how you're performing also, all these things. Because in the self-supported, like we showed for the RAM RQ races, we tell the crew, you track everything that's going on so that you can do the maths that is required. In self-supported, you're going to be doing it yourself. So the better you know the distances, the route. Next session that we'll be having will be on route, and we'll be telling you what all we give you, what all tools we use. Then you use those to prepare for the race in advance. Yeah, I hope your questions answered.
So I'll just add one more point. So the race is never, like, I stress on this point, the race is not always won by the most physically fit rider. It is won by the rider who is prepared the best for the race. So that helps, definitely helps, and that will definitely help anybody who does that in future as well.
Thanks, Bharat.
Thanks. There's a question from Amol Ramteke. Amol, why don't you just unmute yourself and ask the question instead of putting in the chat box?
Hi, Bharat. This is Amol. I have a very general question. Actually, I do brevet most of the time, and armrest are banned in brevets. I find it very difficult, like holding the armrest and riding the bicycle. So I will be very much glad if you tell me how much really the pro bikers spend time on the aero bar for the ultra races like 640 kilometers or 1200 kilometers.
So I don't know about the pro racers, but I can comment on myself.
Yes, yourself.
I'm not a pro racer. I'm just a normal racer, a rider, not a racer also. So I've been doing this for fun and my personal passion. So for my professional, I do my job. So as compared to me, I just only come up from the aerobars when I'm climbing. Most of my climbing is when I'm not on my aerobars, and I come off my aerobars when there's a photo shoot going on. Like I just come up, pose a nice pose, and then again when the photos are done, I just again go back on my aerobars, because that is a comfortable position and I can continue. That is comfortable and that will not drain energy out of me. So aerobars is the comfortable, and definitely like you have told that you are not comfortable using it. So I took about 6 months to get comfortable with aerobars. So it is normal with everyone. For my cycling shoes, I got comfortable with them after about 20 months. So initially it used to, like, it takes time. You never worry that it's not like Bharat is doing this. So you cannot take examples at any point of time. You have to see like what you achieve. There cannot be your like pattern which your body is allowing you to do. It cannot be compared with anyone else. So like I got comfortable with using aerobars when I was doing race around Austria, and I purchased them in December, and the race around Austria was in August. So in June was the first time I had put my aerobars on my bike in January itself, but in June was the month when I first time was riding on those aerobars. Like they were just show purpose for about 5 months. So you have to always, like, that was my case. You can be better than that at least. Like I took a lot of time.
Yeah, so you need to just invest some time in getting used to it before your events itself. Then, and work with your bike fit, your position, all of that. And once you manage that, so be prepared to spend some time on doing this thing, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll just take a question. Kapil has.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Bharat sir, for giving such a minute inputs from your past experience. And I think you have covered almost all the things which we faced in the many races. And I have learned a lot of things from my personal experiences from DC and from Ultra Spice as well. And yeah, so lot of things we learn from our own experiences, and we cannot resemble from the other experiences. Like I have learned a lot of things, like from the aero bar, how to use it, and how where to avoid, and what things needs to be taken care of during my races. Like my biggest worry and my biggest failure is my off saddle time. I have my DC off saddle time was also very much, which I had not even planned for that, and the same is Ultra Spice as well. So yeah, so we have observed a lot of things which I need to cope up and I need to work upon. Yeah, so thanks for the inputs and thanks for your time and the valuable experience sharing.
Thanks, Kapil. So just to introduce Kapil to everybody, Kapil has raced Deccan Cliffhanger in 2019. That was your first ultra cycle race, right?
Right.
Yeah, and his first race, he came second. He was racing. Was it second or no? You came third, right?
Yeah, third.
Yeah, but it was a great race to watch them. Kabir, Chaitanya, Kapil, and up to some point, Sumit. The four of them were pretty close to each other. Kapil, and for a first timer at the race, it was really good to watch Kapil. And then this year, Kapil raced at the Ultra Spice 1200 and RQ'd in that. So thanks a lot for speaking in, Kapil. And hopefully your saddle time reduces in your next race.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ram, you had a question?
Good evening, ma'am, and Jain sir. Great insights. And there's one issue that I've been facing throughout my riding as yet short riding career, and that is of saddle sores. So we've tried all fancy stuff available in the market, but I still find that it's not great. And after about 400-500 kilometers, they really start bothering a lot. So is there any tried and tested and solid solution for this issue? Because in ultra races, when we ride for more than 1,000 kilometers, the saddle sores can actually hurt you a lot and impact your race. So some inputs on what you use and what is preferable for saddle sores.
So hi Jain Colonel Sriram. So as I'll touch upon what Kapil was saying for earlier. So there were Kapil told ki like I've covered a lot of things and I've told everything. So that is not truth. There is, if Divya gives me time for 5 hours, like I have so much to speak for 5 hours also. So it is an endless thing I've done. Like it is not due to that I didn't have that knowledge. I have that experience on which I can speak. So as coming to saddle sores, which Sriram has brought out. So saddle sores itself is a long topic. I can talk much on that, but just covering it down to few points. Like there are about 7 to 8 points which needs to be taken care when you are concerned. You need to have a saddle comfortable ride. First is hygiene, and hygiene comes from like I always take bath in 24 once in 24 hours. If it is a self-supported format, I omit that. And if it is a long ride, like as I had done in Golden Quadrilateral or Kashmir to Kanyakumari, so initial days I used to always take bath, but when the event is coming to an end and I know that I can push myself without taking bath, like in Kashmir to Kanyakumari, the last 3 days I had not taken bath. So, and probably I changed once, but I just carried on because time was critical. I was not having that 10 minutes or 15 minutes to take bath, and like that something comes from your head, mental strength. So that speaks on itself. So hygiene is one most important thing. You need to change your bib shorts every 24 hours at least once. At least once. If you change it twice, that is up to you. It depends on you, like how much options you have. Third is good quality bib shorts. That is one of the most important factors. Good quality bib shorts matter a lot. In my personal experience, I have worn most expensive bib shorts also, but that has not helped me. So it is never a factor. Like people consider that cycling is very cost intensive thing. No, it is nothing like that. It depends on what suits you. So sometimes a 2000 rupees thing will also suit you much. Like it's just a parameter. It's not for the bib shorts, but and at 15,000, like I'm talking about the saddles. A 2000 rupees saddle suits me much better than a 15,000 to 20,000 rupees or 25,000 saddle. So I've experimented with saddles. So your saddle, fourth point, your saddle should suit you. So you should know your body physiology, and you are the best person for that. Nobody can judge, guide you on that. So what is the distance between your seat bones? And definitely there is saddle fit is there, but that is not much of a science. They just measure seat bone distance, and they just replicate what seat bone different saddles are available. So for me, a very thin saddle works best for me. So generally, you find that all the saddles which are available in market are thin, very narrow in the front. But even that narrow saddles are a trouble for me. So I required that ultra thin front that is not bruising against my thigh regularly. So I always used chaffing on my inner thighs. So that was my problem. So it was actually not a saddle sore for me, but the chaffing on the inner thighs. So that was a problem. So I found that saddle, like I got that saddle from US, and it's not that US word makes it special. It is a economical saddle as compared to US standards also, but that suited me. So you have to find what suits you. The cost or the place of origin doesn't matter ever. So fourth point was saddle, and the fifth is chamois cream. So again, I was using, when I started cycling in 2017, the first ultra race, Ultra Spice, like when the Ultra Spice finished, I was a monkey. And like, I only know it was such unbearable. And my crew took me for a bath in this sea. So like when I went to sea, it was more painful as compared to bike. So it was a pathetic state. And since that event, I've been at least comfortable. And as time is passing, I've become more and more comfortable. So after my Kashmir to Kanyakumari or virtual race across America last year, or Leh to Manali, Golden Quadrilateral, touchwood, even after 15 days of riding, I have not faced those saddle sores or chapping, because I've invested time and energy in selecting my saddle, my bib shorts. One more thing is the chamois cream. So people are used to that. Okay, this chamois cream is there in the market and we'll use this, and that is not done. So for my chamois creams also, I once tried to post my experience with chamois creams. There were only 2 chamois creams available in India. So when I went in 2018, I went to US. I got 7 different chamois creams from there. And till the time you ride at least 200 or 300 or 400 kilometers with that chamois cream, you won't be able to come to know the efficacy of that chamois cream as compared to you, what suits you. So after this much of experimenting for such a long period of time, so much of training hours has gone into, now I've got to know like what suits me the best. So this is a drill for everyone. There are no shortcuts in this. Yes, I can tell you what suits me, but like you know better that whether that will suit you or not. So chamois cream is one. 7th is the bike fit. So then, like as I told, like Saddle Sources itself is science in itself. So seventh is the bike fit. So you need to have a very good bike fit. You should be very comfortable on the bike. As you know that we are doing ultra races, that is the endurance riding. So when endurance riding is there in the picture, you have to be most comfortable on your bike, and there can be no compromise. Whether your speed is getting affected, that is acceptable, but your comfort should not get affected by any chance. So bike fit is very important. The reach with which you are riding on your aero bars or your handle, that has to be comfortable. I've seen like people buy aero bikes, and like I myself am riding aero bike, but the stem which I'm using is much shorter for an aero bike. Like I'm using a 50 stem with my aero bike, so I get the benefits of my aero bike and I keep myself comfortable also. So it is a, like your bike should be comfortable to you. It should not be that I got a good bike and I'll use this only. No, you have to make it comfortable for you. Seventh, I may be missing on 1 or 2 points, but these 7 points are the most important ones. Definitely there will be more. I've put up a blog also on my website for Saddle Source, so you can access to that.
Yeah, well, if you can share the link for the blog on the WhatsApp group, so people can go and.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, does that cover everybody's questions?
Mahesh wants to ask something.
Is that a question or is that a Mahesh? Did you?
Yeah. Hi, Bharat. So you spoke about sleep deprivation. I know it is individualistic, and you also spoke about caffeine, coffee shots, and gels and other things. Do you is it necessary to train for sleep deprivation before the race also? For example, do you do anything else apart from these things during the race? You are taking caffeine gels and coffee shots during the race, but before the race, maybe 1 month prior or something like that, do you train anything specific for sleep deprivation? Apart from knowing your deep sleep time, do you do anything else like yoga, meditation, or anything else, or right during your sleep time?
Yeah, I would address this. There are like 3 questions you have asked in this single question. First thing is that like what I train before the race. So I never deprive myself of sleep before my event, whether it be prior to 1 month also. So I never deprive myself of my sleep. That answers your one of the questions. And I don't train for it. But whenever I'm doing my events, like I've done so many events, with each and every event, I come to know more about my body, how my body behaves. My crew gets to know more about me. So that way I've come to know what is my deep sleep timings, like when I'm bound to sleep. The other timings when I'm like, Breves is a good training platform for training. So I use those coffee shots or caffeine gels or caffeine tablets as available in market. So I use those when I'm doing my breve. I used to like, I've done not done a lot of breves, but whenever in initial timing I used to do breve. I used to do that experimentation when I'm doing that thing on ground, or when I'm training at night, when I'm doing a 24-hour simulation ride. So only then you will get to know the efficacy of that thing which you want to implement on during your race. As I've told, like till the time you don't experiment, you won't come to know how is going to affect it, how you are going to get affected. Like caffeine tablets, some are comfortable using them, but some are not. Some has good effect, some tells it is not having any effect on them. One more point. So there are 2 types of gel available. One is without caffeine and one is with caffeine. So you need to know the contents of the nutrition which you are having since the morning till night and like till the next day morning. So if you are having caffeine in daytime, how would you expect that same caffeine gels to have a positive effect when you are taking it for your sleep? So you should know that what you are eating in the complete daytime. If you are having coffee in day and then you are expecting that when you have coffee at night and your sleep will go away. No, it will not go away. You will not have that positive effect. So you should know, and decaffeination period has to be there of about 45 to 2 months. before you prepare for your before your race day starts. So if you like decaffeinate your body for so long, then definitely when you take coffee shot at night when you are sleep deprived, so definitely it will have a positive effect and you will be riding in your complete steam. But you need to study everything. Like you need to study. That is the first thing which I told. Like it is not, the race will not be won by the rider who is the most physically fit. It will be won by the rider who has prepared the best.
Amazing.
And these preparations mark very small things. You need to know each and every content of the thing which you eat in complete day, so that you can have positive effect at night. So there are many things which are having caffeine to increase your concentration in your daytime also.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bharat.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, like this is a vast topic, with anything related to ultra racing. It's a vast topic, which is why we're doing so many seminars. So hopefully by the end of it, you all will at least know what are the various different aspects that you need to, prepare. How much and I know that for racers like Bharat and Kabir who are regularly riding, a lot of time has got invested in before they even come to the race start line. A lot of time has gone into preparing every minute detail. Okay, I think we'll wrap up this session today. Thanks a lot, Bharat. That was really informative and insightful. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you,
for
Bharat
the
sir.
patient
Thanks
listening.
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.